But I'm telling you, they banned one episode of The Twilight Zone for over half a century. Silenced, consigned to obscurity, and totally erased from television's past. It's finally airing again after 55 long years. But why was it banned originally? What was so dangerous about it? And why is it so timely now more than ever? Today, we're entering a realm shaped by censorship, fear, and redemption. A real-life story that's even stranger than fiction. Welcome to The Twilight Zone. Section 1. Entering the Zone, a show ahead of its time. It was in 1964 that one episode of The Twilight Zone was aired once and gone forever. It stayed locked up for over 5 decades, kept out of syndication, hidden from the public eye, and quietly removed from the history of the series. Why? What had been in that episode that had made it too sensitive to be aired once again? And why is it now coming back in 2025? To seek that answer, we have to go back to where it all started. The Twilight Zone premiered on CBS on October 2, 1959. Unlike any other television program, it never depended on a regular cast or an ongoing narrative. It was an anthology, each episode bringing a new story, a new cast of characters, and a new journey into the unknown, the speculative, and the ethically ambiguous. What held them all together was a low-key, disturbing narration of Rod Serling, who penned or co-wrote 92 of the show's 156 episodes and provided his voice to each spine-tingling twist, starting in episode 2. His tone was serene and measured, but beneath that serenity always lurked a warning. The series came at a moment when America was prosperous in post-war times, but secretly afraid of nuclear destruction, communist subversion, and racial uprisings. Serling, a veteran of World War II, had seen actual horror and wasn't interested in escapism. His writing drew people into stories that probed fear, guilt, injustice, and the unknown. He knew that not only were people afraid of monsters or extraterrestrials, but also of themselves. He employed that dread not to control, but to incite inquiries. What sort of universe are we building? Who are we permit to live there? Who gets deleted? The Cold War lingered in the shadows over numerous episodes, as did McCarthyism, the Red Scare, the race to the nuclear bomb, and the dreadful question of whether or not humanity deserved to live at all. In one of the most popular episodes, Time Enough at Last, a bookworm survivor of a nuclear explosion finds himself unable to read after breaking his glasses. In the shelter, suburban neighbors turn on one another in mere minutes when they perceive a nuclear attack is about to occur. These weren't merely cautionary stories. They were an expression of the world Serling observed around him, skillfully camouflaged in science fiction, so its messages could transcend those who might otherwise censor it. This was the brilliance of The Twilight Zone. Serling employed speculative fiction, narratives involving time travel, extraterrestrials, robots, and alternate universes as a shield. He spoke in these narratives what couldn't be spoken in conventional dramas. Network censors were more permissive if a tale occurred on Mars, even if it was obviously about racism in Alabama. Sponsors objected less to a telekinetic kid having dominion over a little town if the actual theme was about control by an authoritarian regime. Serling shrouded social commentary in science fiction iconography, and for a while it succeeded, but not always. Previous to The Twilight Zone, Serling had experienced a life filled with frustration. In 1956, he authored a live TV drama entitled Noon on Doomsday, meant to describe the murder of Emmett Till. But it was censored so much that it had absolutely no meaning left. The network officials altered the victim from a black boy in Mississippi to an unnamed foreigner due to fear of reprisal from Southern affiliates and advertisers. Enraged, Serling resolved to utilize The Twilight Zone as a means of regaining his voice. Even with the comparative artistic liberty The Twilight Zone afforded, Serling was constrained. CBS became uncomfortable with his steadily more political tone. Ratings were never huge, and sponsors occasionally pulled out during mid-season. Then there was the episode that crossed a line too far, the one that would vanish from history. It was titled The Encounter, and it was shown only once in May of 1964. It starred Neville Brand as a World War II veteran who still seethed with bitterness, and George Takei, young and pre-Star Trek, as a Japanese-American gentleman. The whole tale is confined to one room and culminates in bloodshed. It's rough, upsetting, and in retrospect, masterfully done. But CBS received complaints by the bushel at the time. Viewers called it offensive and dangerous, while Asian American groups denounced the implication that Takei's character's father had been a traitor. America simply wasn't ready to confront its own wartime guilt. CBS immediately pulled the episode from syndication. For decades, The Encounter disappeared from cable, DVDs, and the public consciousness. But why now? Why, after 55 years, is this episode being reintroduced? That's the question we're about to uncover, because this isn't just about one episode of television. It's about history, memory, censorship, and the ongoing fight to bring uncomfortable truths back into the light. Section 2, The Encounter, the episode they tried to bury. For more than half a century, this episode wasn't just lost, it was purposefully buried. Network executives pulled it from reruns, omitted it on home video releases, and even dedicated fans were left unaware. But now, in an unprecedented move in the history of modern media, The Encounter has emerged. Not as a remake, not as an edited or watered-down version, but the original unedited, long-outlawed episode, originally rebroadcast in 2016 and now slated for wide release once more in 2025. How could a segment of a series based on all moral unease and bitter truths be too edgy even for the Twilight Zone itself? What did this soft-spoken, 25-minute chamber tale do so right and so wrong that it disappeared for 55 years? Let's start at the beginning. The Encounter was broadcast on May 1, 1964, as part of the program's fifth and last season. It was just one of 4 so-called bottle episodes ever produced by the Twilight Zone. What in the television industry means a show with its action limited to one set or place. In television, the designation refers to a tale that takes place entirely within one cramped setting and involves an incredibly limited cast, typically as a means of reducing production costs. Even with this reduced environment, however, the meeting succeeds in presenting one of the most thrilling, psychologically nuanced, and socially charged stories of the entire run. It starts in an attic. Neville Brand portrays Fenton, an old World War II veteran, rummaging through a stack of discarded items. In the box, he finds a samurai sword obviously stolen as spoils from a Japanese soldier. Soon, a young Japanese-American man named Arthur, played by George Takei in his first TV appearance, appears in the attic searching for employment. Fenton invites him to have a beer, and the two men begin to converse in what is at first a relaxed, almost cordial conversation. But this isn't a little chat between strangers. What occurs is a slow-motion detonation of trauma, guilt, and long-repressed rage. Fenton starts to talk about the war, about murdering Japanese soldiers, and how he came to own that sword. Arthur attempts to be composed and courteous, but something is off. He fixates on the sword for too long, says repeated words with an unnerving ferocity, and then uncovers his first shocking revelation. His actual name is Taro, and he asserts his father was an Imperial Japan spy who assisted in the planning of the Pearl Harbor attack. From this point on, the tension in the room becomes as tight as a noose. Fenton's paranoia grows, not only haunted by his war crimes, but now convinced that Arthur has come to exact revenge. Arthur, meanwhile, becomes unhinged, insisting that the sword is cursed with a ghost that craves blood. No monsters, ghosts, or extraterrestrial life here. Only 2 men stuck together in one room, both weighed down by decades of conflict within themselves. So why did this one episode cause such a harsh backlash? On the surface, the answer is simple. CBS and its advertisers were afraid of alienating viewers, particularly Asian Americans, due to the manner in which the story portrayed Arthur's father as a traitor. This wasn't a passing comment. It was the entire premise of the plot. It implied that a Japanese-American male resident of the United States had been involved in the coordination of one of the most destructive military actions in recent American history. And this was during 1964, a time when the U.S. government had only recently come to admit fully to its own transgressions against Japanese-American citizens during World War II. Over 120,000 people of Japanese descent, nearly all of them American citizens, had already been forcibly displaced from their homes and sent to internment camps following Pearl Harbor. They were not enemy troops. They were families, children, merchants, and teachers imprisoned solely on the basis of race. The government justified the internment as a national security measure, but there was never any actual evidence of broad disloyalty or spying. And yet in 1960,